Hello, I'm Jerrel from Sungrand, developer of the Silver Falls games. Over the past few weeks, I've been dismantling the previous office I was working out. I've been renovating and rebuilding my office workspaces and setting up a new full-time recording studio, green screen, and live broadcast workstation. So that means that I'll be able to do more interesting and more frequent live streams with all of you, and I'll be able to create my soundtracks in a better work environment, better workspace where I don't have to be cramped, and I'll be able to play a wider range of instruments thanks to that extra space and that improved recording setup. So the content that I wanted to share with you today is a whiteboard that I pulled out of my office workspace as I was dismantling the office, and I'd actually forgot about this. So I developed the very final games for the Nintendo Wii U and 3DS, and this whiteboard is the last whiteboard. It's a last set of whiteboard notes that I had taken while working on these games, and it got to a point where I didn't even have time to get up and erase the whiteboard and take new notes. I actually just started writing my notes in a notepad on my phone just to quickly get through things. Sometimes I would actually just open a notepad on my Windows machine and write my tasks out there, and then I would just plow through those tasks throughout the workday. So there are a couple interesting things here that I would like to share, and some actually cut content that I had totally forgotten about. Again, I'm still setting up my studio, so you might see me disappear off to the side a little bit while I'm still finishing the setup for our lighting rig here. So you can see that I was actually working, at this point I was working on Gaiden, Delusion Destroyers, White Inside Its Umbra, and actually Campfire Stories simultaneously until I stopped work on Campfire Stories and decided to set that aside, so that will be a future Silver Falls title. At the moment, it's been taken off the active development schedule. Well, let's go ahead and have a look here now. This text was in green, so it actually is disappearing with the green screen. So that says, a no save point message, which means that there was a point during development where I actually didn't even have a message that says there's no save point. And I wanted to make it clear in the story mode of White Inside Its Umbra that there are no save points. So I told myself I got to put that in there. Swaying bushes, there was an issue where bushes were not swaying properly. This happens if your geometry is not formatted correctly in the Unity game engine. Instead of your bushes swaying, where the bottom is stationary and the top of the foliage moves around, the whole geometry just moves around like that. So I made a note to myself to fix that. Let's see, we have Electro Blaster, Angle, and Recycle Time. The Electro Blaster is actually a weapon in White Inside Its Umbra. If you know where it's from, then you recognize it. And at that point, there's some point in development where it wasn't. You could actually fire it to a certain extent, but it wasn't working correctly. Let's see, we have the hub terrain resolution. Let's see. Oh yeah, for the Frontier Fighters hub, I had to adjust it for improved performance and stability because it's quite GUI heavy. So I needed to improve the performance. And there was a point where it was chugging in Frontier Fighters, where that hub area was going at like 5-10 frames a second, and it took a fair amount of work to get that running smoothly. Let's see, Frontier Hunters missions. That was a note I think I'd only done one mission so far as I was creating the framework for that gameplay. So I just had to keep replaying the one mission over and over again, and then I had to create the other missions. So I made a note to myself. Item icons, usually early in development and throughout most of it, item icons tend to use the same one icon, and then I get to add the unique icons later on in development, because that's not so important early in development. Let's see here. We have melee icons. There was supposed to be an indicator. I think they didn't make it into the final game, where there's an indicator where you hold down the button to do the melee attack, or you can use the nunchuck. And if you hold the button, a prompt would appear on screen to swing the Wii remote, and you would perform the melee attack. But I think I didn't have time to implement that, so I think I just left that. Character melee weapons. I wanted the player to be able to collect and earn more melee weapons, and then they can customize them and upgrade them, and I just didn't have time in development for that. So that was a little frustrating for me because I love all that sort of stuff. So I think I left it to where some characters just kind of have. There's a couple different melee weapons, and some characters have different ones than others. Okay, we have finished all gamepad functions. That was just a big general, hey, the gamepad isn't finished, you need to get that done. Save data. Again, there's some save data when it comes to Frontier Hunters. That's what that note is for. Gamepad EX mode, so that was a note to program, because the gamepad works differently for Frontier Hunters. Generally, in Silver Falls games, when I have the Frontier modes, in terms of development and programming, they're referred to as the EX mode. So that way you don't have to keep referring to it as Frontier this and Frontier that. There's going to be an interesting one here coming up pretty soon. It says final TP apps, the TechPad apps. So I had to decide which ones were going to be cut. There were some unfinished apps that I just didn't have time to finish, and I had to decide what was going to be on the actual TechPad itself. You have scene with mechanic. There's quite a few different scenes, so I had to script those. I left placeholder scenes in there until very late in development, and that's when I actually wrote the dialogue and I brought the game together in a more cohesive way. We have unlockable soldier. That's at some point soldier was going to be unlockable in White Inside its Umbra, and I'm going to be honest, I don't fully remember what functionality he was supposed to serve in the game. I'm kind of thinking towards later in development, Soldier was probably going to form a similar function that Samba serves when you play easy mode in the story mode in White Inside its Umbra. Samba follows you, and that is a story explanation as to why monsters don't attack you in easy mode. Is for some reason they're reacting to Samba and they won't approach you. And I think not late but early in development I thought Soldier was going to play that sort of role, but Soldier is treated differently from other animals when it comes to any of his appearances in the games, and I realized he couldn't serve a support function like that because he's treated as a full character. I think I also wanted him to be playable and unlockable in the Frontier Hunters mode, and I had to scrap that because I just didn't have time to implement his unique rig and unique animation set. So he was cut from Frontier Hunters. We have program all EX mode. That's at that point where I still didn't have the equip menus set up. I think early in development you could earn items that could be added to your inventory, but you couldn't actually equip them until kind of late in development. And that's because I had so many other aspects of the game to work on. And then we have TP failure at end, right, the TechPad failure. So there's quite a few scripted moments. I had to program it into the framework where the TechPad can fail for various reasons, whether losing signal. There's a couple different things that can occur throughout story mode, and so I had to program those into the framework. And I knew that I wanted them in there, I just didn't have it in the framework yet. So these notes are really late in development, so you can see where I knew that I wanted these things in. I had planned to have them in, and it wasn't until very, very late in development that I was actually able to implement them. And the reason being is I was so busy creating everything else, every other part of that engine. Okay, so for Campfire Stories, again, we're not going to see Campfire Stories for a while now because other games have taken priority. I'm working on Face Takers, is what I'd really like to get out soon. So Campfire Stories, I just need to get all the characters formatted. I think there's going to be around 36, 40 playable characters in Campfire Stories, something like that. Yeah, it's not that interesting really right now. It's that one. I'll talk more about that at some other point. But the interesting thing about Campfire Stories is the stages are built in chunks, and they are built procedurally. So every so often, with a preset amount of time, stages are regenerated, and they are created on the fly. So every day that you play the game, the missions are different. The level layout is totally different. That just adds a fun challenge that you can approach with all the different playable characters there. Okay, and now we have notes for the Delusion framework, which is the name of the framework for Gaiden Deathly Delusion Destroyers. So we have the weapon hitbox logic. These notes are actually pretty early in development, and it was pretty early on that I stopped using the whiteboard because I just needed to work so fast that I didn't even have time to go over there and look up, and plus I had no floor space in my office, so it was a matter of navigating over to the wall that had the whiteboard and redoing it. So there was a point where the weapon hitboxes didn't even have real logic; they had placeholder logic, and they were able to just damage the enemy a preset amount. And that was the note to myself that I had to program that all of the logic that takes into account your character's stat boosts, your character's levels, their equipment, all of that stuff. That was the note to myself to, okay, get rid of the placeholder stuff and create all the logic for that. And that also includes enemies actually taking the damage by reacting to the hitboxes. I needed to, again, early on it was just the hero takes preset damage, it was like 5 health points or whatever. So that was the note to calculate taking damage from the enemies, and the enemies have their own levels and their difficulties, and being able to debuff the enemy and reduce their attack power, that was all a part of that note. The hero charge meter logic. So again, I had a placeholder. Every so often the character's charge meter fills up. That was the note to, okay, now I have to take into account the character's stats, any kind of boosts that they have to their charge speed, anything like that. There's so much calculation because it's quite a complex RPG. It's a battle RPG, and the battle system is the most important part of it. And then we have the change, skill, and armor menu logic, and that was so much work. I'm looking at that note there, and that took probably three to 4 days non-stop of just I'd gone like tunnel vision, because that was a massive amount of logic. It has to connect to a number of other systems in the game, and I was just dreading it. So I thought, writing it down, I'll sort of, okay, it'll make more sense to me, and I'll sort of motivate myself. If I see it up there sitting on the wall, then I'll feel like I'll be able to do it. But that was huge, because not only are you equipping your weapons, but you also have to remove the weapon, you have to keep the information, find an empty item slot to put that in. And you have to make sure that the stats from that weapon are applied to the hero in the correct way. So yeah, those are the final notes that I had taken on that, and a little bit of behind the scenes cut content on White-Sided Umbra. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at that, and please stick around. I've got a number of series planned, so I will be doing cut content for all the various games in the Silverfall series. I'll also be doing Q&A, so all of you please feel free to send in questions about particular games in the series, and then I'll answer questions for those games in videos. So please take care. I have heaps of fun stuff coming out as well. I'm just ironing out the details and finalizing the formula for the upcoming videos. So thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you again next time.